Let's welcome in from the West Coast our special guest, Mr. Ken Prescott, the star of 42nd Street on Broadway. And Ken, welcome.
Well, Ray, that commercial sounded like we were landing on a spaceship. I'm just glad.
Well, Ken, in some ways we kind of are. We're the WCSB spacecraft, and we're landing into your hearts, and we're able to bring somebody like you to the airwaves, and we're blessed to do that.
Thanks, man. We're really happy to be talking to you.
Well, thank you. And let me start with you're a producer and director and a choreographer for the great new musical BUGLE Boy, and I'm a huge fan of Glenn Miller. Tell me how this came to be.
I'll tell you I'll try to make it quick, although I'm very long-winded. When I was, do you know LinkedIn? Do you know that site LinkedIn?
Oh, yeah. I'm on LinkedIn, yes.
Yeah, well, I'll have to find you. Anyway, this guy contacted me, and I had my own big band show in Myrtle Beach for a year with the Jimmy Dorsey Orchestra. I wrote it, I directed it, I produced it, I choreographed it, I started it. My lawyer said if I put a broom up my behind, I could have swept the stage, too. At any rate, we had...
Wow.
That's pretty good. I like it. All right.
We had a wonderful show, and this guy contacted me, Den Stevenson, and said, I think you're just a guy to flush the show out. It had been played in the UK and on the West End in a smaller version. And he said, I think you're the guy. And after I said, well, let's chat about it. And it's a wonderful show. And I added some dialogue, and I fleshed out the musical numbers. So it's really quite wonderful. And we're very excited about the project.
What is it about Glenn Miller that it resonates with so many people? Because there were other big band leaders, and there were other good ones like Benny Goodman and what have you. But what made Glenn Miller so good?
Well, I think the fact that he left us early, and we don't really know exactly how he left us. And why. And also his music had a really unique sound, and it personifies a period of time in this country when, though we were at war, we were unified, and everybody loved everybody for their participation. And I think that embodies his kind of music as well, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I Moonlight Serenade and The Mood. I mean, you can go on forever with this music, and it's, it's incredible. Like, here's a little excerpt from it right now. The Glenn Miller Band. This, so our listeners that don't know what it is. I mean, Ken, when you hear this music, it's like, oh my God, this is incredible.
A little side note. I don't know if you know this. You know who the Modern Airs were?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, well, they sang with Glenn Miller in the 40s. Well, I was a member of the New Modern Airs in 2005 through 2007. Wow. And singing that music, first of all, the harmonies are extremely difficult, but it was so wonderful. Well, we did shows with Patti Page and Jane Russell and Marianne Mobley. She came off stage, and I said, honey, empty is the head that wears the crown. But anyway...
Marianne, I know Marianne Mobley. I mean, she's very talented.
I know she just passed away. In fact, did you know that?
Yeah. That I did not. I wasn't aware of that.
I didn't know it either.
Yeah, recently.
Yeah. But anyway, singing that music, it's wonderful music, and the numbers we're doing. I Got a Gal in Kalamazoo, and Chattanooga Choo Choo, and Moonlight Serenade, and American Patrol, and all those wonderful tunes. So it's a very exciting project. It really is.
And how far along is the project?
Okay. Ray, what a good question. I'm glad you asked me that. The script's written. We've got some people interested in the funding. We're also talking to people about, filming it. And then, how the Regal Cinemas put out, I'll say, an opera from the National Opera, and they'll put it in their movie theaters, broadcast live or simulcast. So We're trying to do all those kinds of things. We really want to do is take it on a tour of America before, trying to launch it on Broadway, because I've been in 8 Broadway shows, and, the critics are fickle, and you don't want to give them a chance. So it's such a good show, and and we have a big surprise in the show. At the end of the show, Glenn Miller is going to descend the stairs, talk to the audience, and lead the orchestra.
Wow.
How is he going to do that, you ask?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I mean, how in the heck he left us in 1944?
Well, I found him. We pieced him together, pumped him up.
Nice.
Hey, I'm just saying. No, No, it's going to be a hologram, and the holographic technology is so amazing now that when he comes down the stairs and talks to the audience, and the audience is going to have a heart attack. They're going to think it's so wonderful. So that's going to be the denouement, if you will, of the show, which will just be an added layer onto the already, I hope, wonderful experience that the audience will have.
Well, it sounds incredible. Ken Prescott, our special guest here with Ray Carr live in Cleveland, Ohio. Ken is the producer and director and choreographer of the new wonderful musical Bugle Boy, the life story of Mr. Glenn Miller, who tragically passed, or we don't know what happened to him in 1944. He could have went down on a plane. I don't know. Ken, what do you think happened to him?
Well, I think he's with Amelia Earhart right now.
Well, hey, you never know. I mean, Amelia's been sighted quite at a few different islands and Hawaii and all over the place.
You know, Ray, I truly don't know, but there's so many, in this world, there's so many odd things that I don't think we'll ever know, the real story. You know what I mean? And it was did you ever see the movie, The Glenn Miller Story?
A long time ago, I have.
Yeah, and, it was such a heartfelt, tragic sort of thing. I couldn't even speculate. What do you think happened to him?
I think he went down. I think he went down in a plane crash.
There was a theory.
Well, hold on. We have a few other people in studio, Ken. This is Rockin' Ed, and he wanted to add his 2 cents here. Go ahead, Ed.
There was a theory that I heard that they were supposed to have planes were supposed to have a bombing mission over somewhere like in France or whatever, and they called it off. And they had to turn the planes around, and so they had to jettison the bombs from the plane, and it just so happened that Glenn's plane was under this other plane, and I guess what happened was essentially bombed by his own...
My God.
And that's one speculation that's been...
So, possibly an accidental bombing.
Accidental bombing, right.
But, I know there's a joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going to go. I'm not going to try.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, he left us with an incredible legacy. And how many members were in his band?
Oh, now that's a great question. I know that on stage, when you have a live performance, we're going to have the band always on stage. Sometimes it will be prominent, sometimes it'll be behind a scrim. The bandstand will split. We're going to have 14 to 16, but I believe there were like 22 pieces in his band.
Wow. And who are some of the famous members that came out of that band?
Oh, golly. Well, I don't know. Well, I think, I don't know. Did Gene Krupa play with him for a while?
Krupa was with Benny Goodman.
Oh, yeah. I don't
know who sang with him for like a split second back in 1939? She was like 14 years old. Kay Starr.
Oh, I was in the Palm Springs Follies here, and Kay Starr was in the show, and she was the greatest broad you'll ever meet.
Oh, I love her voice.
The Wheel of Fortune, and she was. I really enjoyed Kay Starr. Yeah.
Oh, Kay Starr was she was a great gal, just a great gal. Oh, and a lot of, of course, I love the sound he got with the modern airs because they blended so well, and Tex Beneke, and all that kind of stuff.
That's right, Tex Beneke. I remember that name.
It was
now.
Also the sound that he made within the band of the saxophones with the clarinets, because everybody else had their sound, like, for instance, instead of having the trumpets dominate like other bands did.
Yeah, Glenn had the combination of the two.
Of the clarinet,
right.
The clarinet and the I think it was either the alto or the soprano saxophones coming together, and if you get Moonlight Serenade, that's the greatest example of that sound.
Yes, it was. That's right.
Well, in fact, that's one of the segments of the show is him finding his sound and actually playing Moonlight Serenade. So that's an absolutely accurate account. You're on it.
Yeah, we're on it. We have a smart cast here.
These two are like encyclopedias.
Yeah, here it is right now. Let's just take a little listen to this right now. Ken Prescott is our special guest. This is Glenn Miller, Moonlight Serenade. I've been a DJ for, 35 years, and when I early on in my career, I would play this at weddings when I would DJ weddings, and to me, it resonated with me as a young 20-year-old how beautiful this song was, even though it was many years before, it was years before I was born. You listen to it today, it still feels the same to me. It's a great song, and it just a masterpiece, really.
It is. When I sang with the Modernaires, Paula Kelly Jr., who was Paula Kelly's daughter, who has since passed away, unfortunately, we were singing with the show with Jane Russell. So we finished Moonlight Serenade, and all the three of them go on, here in the moonlight, the love. I go, what the hell are you doing? Oh, she said, I forgot to teach you the real version. So there we are in rehearsal. There I am in the dressing room going, okay, I'll learn it. I can learn it. Go ahead.
Wow. Hey, Ken, I wanted to also alert our audience. We have another special guest with you at this time, Dorothy Dale Kloss, and Dorothy is with you, and I'd like to say hi to her. Dorothy, how you doing?
I'm just doing great. And let me just say, the Modernaires were terrific, and the one daughter, is still living.
Oh.
And Julie
Dickinson, and she lives in Utah. Julie's a great gal. She's the last remaining child.
The last of the Modernaires.
Good
but
enough.
there was another
Martha.
Martha passed away though.
Yeah.
But there was another Modernaires several years ago, Johnny Drake, who sang with them, and then. When I was with the Eddie Duchin band, he was a vocalist with Duchin's orchestra. So, they did move around a lot.
Well, Dorothy, let me introduce you properly so our audience knows who you are, because you are a very special and prominent guest. Dorothy Dale Kloss, you are the oldest living showgirl at the age of 92. You began your dancing at the age of 3 while Calvin Coolidge was president. And this is amazing. It really is. And then you taught legendary Bob Fosse how to tap dance. Tell me about that.
Oh, well, don't get too excited. Here's Bob, of course. I'm from Chicago originally.
Okay.
And we were both in the same neighborhood. In fact, Bobby lived behind me on Paulina, and I lived on Ashland Avenue.
Okay.
And he was like 10 years old, and I was 13. And I was taking dancing at a little dancing school over the drugstore, about a mile away from the house. And the teacher there, Mrs. Comerford, who was a great gal, and she said one day, Dorothy, you really have a knack for tap. And she said, I'd like to teach you to take classes and be the teacher. Well, what did I know? I was 13. I said yes to everything, So, almost everything. Well, we won't go there, will we?
Wow.
And so I said, okay, So I went on working with her. And then one day she said to me, listen, I have this class that I want you to take over. And I went, okay. So she walked me over to the studio and opened the door, and she said, this is your class. And it was 5 little boys, and they were like 9 and 10 years old. So Bob Fosse that was his first tap class. So I had the privilege of saying I gave him his first shuffle ball change.
Good Lord. And can you let us know what year was that?
Oh, my God. You really want to know?
I do.
That was 39.
Okay.
Yeah, 39.
No,
40.
30.
No.
You were 13. Oh, wait a minute. 23, 33, like 1937.
Yeah, because I went professional at 15.
Yeah, I know all these stories, you understand, by heart.
He knows them better than I do.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. So it kind of gives our audience a little timeline here. And you also have done so many other things that I could spend the next hour going over them, and you've played and you've danced in probably every country in the world. So let me ask you this, Dorothy. What has kept you going all these years? I mean, you could have retired years ago. Why do you keep doing it?
Who wants to retire? I'll never retire. Listen, you sit down in a rocking chair and it's over. And that's not our thing. You know, I mean, I'm at 10 in Follies. You know, I did the Follies for 15 years, and I went in the Follies at 71.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, so...
In case your viewers don't know, there's the Palm Springs Follies, which ran 23 years, and it was a show that featured performers 55 and older. So she was in it for 15 years. She has a star in the Walk of Stars here, and, you know, I'm trying to get all this in because I know you only have time. Dorothy and I have an act called Two for the Show, and we just came back from the Metropolitan Room in New York City, which was just fabulous, and we're getting ready to go to San Francisco in December. We do ballroom, and we tap, and we sing, and I mean, she comes out in the Showgirl costume, and it's really wonderful.
Yeah, Two for the Show. I mean, what does the show actually entail?
Well, it really goes back to the beginning of vaudeville. And not the beginning, I should say the end of vaudeville. and then we kind of, because Ken and I are from different eras, not too far away, he's catching up to me, which I'm very happy about. But on the other hand, he was Broadway and, you know, mostly, and then he went into choreography and all that. I worked with most of the big bands when we did 5 a day.
5 a day?
Oh, yes, we did 5 shows a day. That was the theaters. And I toured with Eddie Duchin for a year. And when we did the 5 a day, you had the Pathé News, the movie of the week, and the stage show with the big band. And it was a set show. We had Billy DeWolf in the show, a ventriloquist, me, the Muriel Abbott dancers were in it, and the big band. And you did that 5 times a day. And we didn't, you know, feel a thing. It was just fun, and we loved every minute of it. And then we went on tour, you know.
And, you know, Dorothy worked with so many big stars, the Mills Brothers, and Jackie Coogan, and Harry Richmond, and Mel Torme, and, I mean, you know.
You know, Dorothy, let me ask you about that. That's interesting, Ken, you brought that up, because I was going to, you know, add into that. Who are some of the inspirations? I mean, you're an inspiration to all of us because you're so great at what you do. But who were some of your inspirations that, you know, inspired you to be better?
Well, you know, the Showgirl thing is one little side of my life. I'm really thrilled with the Guinness Book of Records because it's great for the resume. But I was a tap dancer back in the good old days. That's what I did. And, you know, sing and dance. And my inspiration was like Eleanor Powell. I loved Eleanor. I loved the all-American look. You know, she was, and remember, I was performing during the war, Second World War.
Okay.
And, you know, and I did USO. I didn't go overseas because I had 2 brothers over there. And when they heard that I was thinking of coming over, I got letters and it said, there's 2 of us over here, that's enough. So you do it back. Do your USO, you know, in the United States, which I did. And I found, I sold all the war bonds and performed at all the camps. In fact, the last show that I did with Eddie Duchin, I didn't know it was going to happen, but it was at Great Lakes. In Great Lakes, Illinois, you know, and all the sailors, 5 million of them. And at the end, Eddie Peabody, I don't know if you remember the name, great banjo player, he was the head of special services. And at the end of the show, he came up on the stage and he said, and now, ladies and gentlemen, he said, I want you to all stand and give a rousing hand for Eddie Duchin, his orchestra, and Dorothy Dale, and for the wonderful evening we've had. But, he said, tonight the band is breaking up. It will be their last time together because Eddie is being commissioned and be going off to war.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah, and that was...
I got to tell you a story about Dorothy she'd never tell you herself. She had an agent, Ray Light, and Eleanor Powell was coming out of retirement to do a show. And I don't know whether it was at the Shapery or the...
It was.
At the Shapery. Eleanor had her own floor and everything. And Ray said, "Oh, Dorothy, let's go." And Dorothy said, "Oh gosh, this is great." And Dorothy was probably a little older in her 20s or, whatever. So they went, and Eleanor's out there, and gosh, Dorothy said, "Oh, Ray, she's so wonderful." And Ray looked at her and said, "Well, Dorothy, you're every bit as good as Eleanor Powell." Oh, Dorothy said, Ray said, "Dorothy, you're as good or better. You just didn't get that break." Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Amazing.
And if you see Dorothy tapping today, she tap dances like a son of a gun.
Well, thank you, but you're prejudiced, Anyhow, but those were great days, and you had a chance to really work with all these wonderful people because everybody had acts. Today you never see jugglers, you never see acrobats or magicians.
Good point, Dorothy, because a lot of younger people today don't know what vaudeville was. Let's educate the audience a little bit. Let's explain to them what vaudeville was and why it existed. So I'll let you take that over because, you were able to see more of it than I did.
Well, I think that's what vaudeville was. I mean, it was mostly all acts. And I think that vaudeville a lot of it came from burlesque.
Okay.
All your comedians like Joey Bishop and Henny Youngman and all those great. See, we never see those guys anymore. And they were Milton Berle, all of them. They were so funny.
But don't forget, Ray. I'm going to let Dorothy talk again. But don't forget, there was no TV.
Yeah.
There had been a big recession, and people were looking to be entertained. And when you went in that theater, and the lights went down, it's like the movies of the 30s and 40s. You could lose your troubles and escape for a couple hours and see these wonderful performers, and they were wonderful. Burns and Allen, I mean, all the famous people that we know all came from vaudeville.
That's true. And they just, they loved what they were doing, and I think that was 95% of it. And they were always willing to help the other guy. The other act. I can't tell you, of today, there's great training out there. The young people of today, oh my God, they have all these wonderful schools in New York and all this great jazz classes. Ken and I there's a great school in New York, Luigi's. Of course, Luigi's gone now, but we used to go there and take class up until about 2 years ago. And they have all these great teachers. We used to share steps. There would be another tap dancer, and he'd have a step, or I'd have a step, and what are you doing there? You want to see that? You want to hear it? Yeah, okay. And then all of a sudden you stole that step and it was in your next routine, But it was sharing with the other people. The only ones that didn't share anything with you were the magicians. And they used to lock themselves in their rooms. and because they thought you might steal their secrets,
Stuff.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, people... I think this probably sounds really altruistic, but I think people were nicer then. I think you wanted the act before you to be great because then the audience was predisposed to like you.
Okay.
You didn't want them to be lousy because what could that be?
But you didn't have the competition. I don't think that they're not as nice today. I mean, you could lose a lot of your audience.
But I'm talking about on those live shows. I think people had just a little more heart then,
Well, yeah, I agree with you. Dorothy, I'm watching you right now on YouTube, and you can do that. Dorothy Dale Kloss, and it's an amazing performance to watch you perform.
Yes, I've seen it too. You look wonderful, Dorothy.
That is amazing.
Dorothy, let me ask you this. Is there a special diet that you consume every day to keep you this way?
Right, heavy drinking at all times.
That's what they say.
Amen. All right.
A little vodka couldn't hurt, And we try to, especially there are several places out here that they know us well. And incidentally, you're in Cleveland.
Yes.
And I worked Cleveland.
Okay.
And you there was a wonderful restaurant there, and actually I met Irving Berlin there. I was performing. It was called Monaco's.
Yes.
And, oh, my God, you're going back to the 40s on this. But the man that owned it, Mr. Monaco, was just sensational. And I would work it 2 or 3 times a year. I also, I think it was the Fox Theater.
Okay.
If you recall the theater there right in the main drag.
Yeah.
Is the Netherlands Plaza there too?
No, that's Cincinnati.
Oh, Cincinnati.
See, he gets my stories mixed up. And but
no, there's no heckling from the peanut gallery there. Listen, Dorothy wrote a book which is sensational.
Oh, really?
Called I'm not in Kansas anymore. Love Dorothy. It got 5 stars on Amazon, and it is absolutely. I tell you why it's great.
I'll send you one if you send me your address.
Oh, absolutely, we can do that. In fact, there is even a link to the page where the book is available under your name on our friends page.
Oh, good. And if you contact Dorothy, she'll get to see you and sign it for you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Now, our special guest, Ken Prescott and Dorothy Dale Kloss, I want to thank both of you for being here. We're going to continue the interview now till top of the hour. But Dorothy and Ken, I wanted to ask you a question. One of my favorite performers of all time was Al Jolson. Can either one of you speak about him?
I didn't quite make it with him.
I don't think anybody else did either.
Well, he actually passed away, I think, in 1950 or early 50s.
He was a little earlier, although I did date Harry Richmond. And if you remember Harry Richmond, he was the man who made
If You're Blue and You Don't Know Where to Go.
Oh, yeah, Putting on the Ritz, of course. Yeah.
Classic.
And that's a little piece we do in the show where I say that, and then I turn and I say, he says, who else did you work with? K-Star.
We just talked about. I give you a little tidbit about Al Jolson. My first Broadway show was No Nanette with Ruby Keeler.
Oh.
Not in 1934, in 1970. Anyway. And she was married to Al Jolson.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you know that?
I did know that. I read that a long time ago because I remember the first time I ever heard of Al Jolson was the movie with Larry Parks.
Oh, right.
Jolson's story.
Right. And, she never talked about him. And then in later years, she came back to New York for something. And I guess he was a very talented guy, not a terribly warm-hearted individual.
Well, there you go again.
But a very talented guy. Very talented.
Yeah, but they all were very much alike. There was Harry Richmond. There was Al Jolson. There was, what's the other one? The other Jessel?
George Jessel.
George Jessel.
Eddie Cantor.
Let Dorothy tell you a story about Eddie Cantor.
Oh, this would be great.
Oh, okay. I had just gotten back from South America and the Muriel Abbott dancers, and Muriel Abbott is the one who I was working for. In fact, in later years, she booked all the Hilton hotels, their shows, like with Liberace and Hildegard and all those people. And anyhow, so we got back, and Eddie was going to do Banjo Eyes on Broadway. And so she thought it would be great for her girls, the Muriel Abbott dancers, and myself. And so we were invited to go to the Waldorf in the Grand Ballroom there, and Eddie was there, and he was going to audition us. So the girls did a number for him, and he watched it, and then she said, Dorothy, you do your solo number, you're part of your act. And so I got up, and he said to me, boy, you really want to do this, don't you? And I said, yes, I do. He says, well, then let's get on with it. And so I did it, and we finished. And which I didn't know at the time, but she talked to him, and she said, so, Eddie, what about it? How about my girls? And he said, I just don't think they're going to fit in to this show. But I'll tell you what, I'll take the little blonde. the tap dancer.
Wow.
And he said, well, you can't have her because she signed with me.
Ooh.
I wasn't signed with her, but I was too young to realize.
Dorothy, if I may ask you a question. Did you ever work with the great Bill Bojangles Robinson?
No, I tell you what, I didn't work with a lot of tap dancers.
Okay.
Because that was, and I didn't do movies. I had an offer to go to my agent at the time. We're talking about a different era than today, but he called me one day and said, how would you like to go work your way out to Hollywood? And I said, oh, and how am I going to do that? And he says, well, I'll book you in Oklahoma and I'll map it all out for you. And I said, oh, and what's this paying? And I had a mother at home I was more or less supporting, and at that time, and I needed money to pay the rent. We're not fooling around here with working my way out to Hollywood. And he said, oh, well, about $125 a week. And I said, oh, I don't think so. I'm making much more than going to east. And he said, yeah, but just think when you get out there, you'll be able to maybe make movies. I said to him, you want to know something? There's 5,000 blondes that look just like me out there. And one of them will beat me to it. So I'm just going to keep my act and be happy and move along. And so I don't know where all those blondes are today. I'm sure some of them made it.
But they're still not still dancing. Let me tell you.
You are the oldest living showgirl at 92. Dorothy, that's amazing. And you're sharp as a tack. And I just can't get over that.
Fabulous.
Well, I think it's because, I have Mr. Wonderful sitting here, and he's full of the old one, too, and he keeps me laughing all the time, and I give him a lot to laugh about, I'm telling you. But, we both love to dance, and that's how it all happens.
And perform, and you have to really love. You really have to love what you're doing. There are two kinds of people in show business. One kind that loves what they're doing, and the other kind that just loves their self-aggrandizement. And we just love what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's 95% of it, And we teach, when we're not doing shows around the road doing something, we teach like 2 and 3 classes a week. So that keeps I teach tap, he teaches tap and jazz, and also ballet. Believe it or not.
So Ray, get your point shoes on, Katie, and come on to class.
Hey, Ken, I would absolutely love to. Let me ask you, what do you see in young kids like today? Do you see something different in this generation that other generations didn't have, or is it just the same? And as time goes on.
No, there is. I can't say this about all children. We don't teach children's classes. I wouldn't have the patience for them anymore. But I will say that I think the difference is they're getting much better training than I ever got when I started out. I had to earn everything by watching, looking, and copying from other people, other dancers, whatnot. But of today, they have these great schools they can go to. But I do find that they have an attitude. Now, I'm not saying every kid. That's not what I'm saying. But some of them think they're much better than they are.
So they feel entitled.
They feel entitled. And I just had an experience with this at a school here. And I couldn't believe these girls, and I finally said to them, you try to correct them on something, and it was like, I know what I'm doing. They did one little show at McCallum Theater here for open call or something, and they think they're ready for Broadway, and they're not. Mm-hmm. First of all, the attitude is wrong.
First of all, if they go to Broadway and they walk in that room, let me just tell you, and that choreographer looks at them and they give them a snotty look, they're out. They're out. You have to, if you know so much, you've got to. I always say, if you're so good, weren't you nicer?
Well said, Ken. Well said.
Yeah, but I think also, and their parents all think that theirs is the most wonderful. But, I worked with John Davison about 5 years ago, and he's a lovely man. And so his daughter was going to, not Juilliard, but some performing arts school in New York. And he was going to be gone for 3 or 4 days because she was graduating.
Okay.
So, he was gone, and then he came back after his trip. I said, well, how'd everything go, John? And he said, oh, God, it's so discouraging, Dorothy. He said, she was auditioning. They had 2 openings. I can't remember what musical it was. They had 2 openings, and they had 400 kids, auditioning for the 2 parts. Now, that's competition. So I don't know if that has something to do with their attitude.
But now, Ray, you sound like, I have a question for you, because you sound like you're really interested in, the theatrical history and performing history.
Yes, I am.
Don't you think that the people we're talking about of an older generation, no matter how astute they were in their craft, and they were very well trained, but they had heart and they connected with the audience immediately. And I think no matter where you go, no matter audiences want to be connected with by the performer, and I think that's sometimes they get caught up in the training and they forget the performance value and the emotional connection with the audience.
Ken, you could not have said that any better. I completely concur with you, and I think that is lacking in a lot of young performers today. Look your audience in the eye, give your soul to them, be honest, open, and give all you've got to them. And if you do that, they feel that.
Yeah, well, that's why people like Barbra Streisand and connect, because when she sings, you feel like she's singing to you. Even brash people before, like Ethel Merman.
Oh, yeah.
When she came on, it was electric. I mean, there was no fooling around. I mean, there was no fooling around with her, And I think it's just very Fred Astaire. All those people, when they performed, you connected with them immediately. And I think one of the reasons is I think all of them loved what they were doing.
Yeah. Dorothy and Ken, we have a caller that would like to ask you guys, or you would like to ask Dorothy a question.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello, this is Radio Joe, Parma, Ohio. I'd like to ask Dorothy how you maintain your zest for life, and
Ray, we missed that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dorothy.
No, Ray, we missed that question.
Okay, Joe wanted to ask you, how do you keep your zest for life? How do you keep that incredible energy level up at 92? And I'm complimenting you beyond belief, because anybody at 92 that can do what you do and still love what they do at the level that you do is absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. We don't sit down much, but we're not dancing, we're walking, or we're drinking vodka. No, and then we do the Russian dance, But no, I have a little song I always sing that I love, and George Burns is the one who introduced it. And I thought he was a very funny man, he and Gracie. And it goes, my voice isn't too good tonight, but it goes, I love life, I'd like to do it again, though I may not be much more than I've ever been, but just to have the chance to turn back the hands and make my life begin, oh yeah, I'd like to do it again. And I think that's how I am. When I wake up in the morning, I say, well, I've got another chance to do it again. And off we go.
Dorothy, that's great. That is amazing. You just floor me. I just think that is wonderful, Dorothy.
Also, Ray, don't forget, don't you think that people are born with certain energy levels and certain ways of behaving, and some people just have. I mean, we're just naturally full of it. No, I mean, we have a lot of energy, you know.
I think the other thing, you know, so many older people, and I don't want them to feel that I'm putting them in it. That's the problem of today. You see, when you're 55, they've already told you you're a senior. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
You know, you're not a senior at 55. And a lot of the people, they accepted it because they could get in the movies cheaper. Well,
not to mention free coffee.
You're a senior. You know, I had a girlfriend of mine. We were going to the show one day right after she reached 55. But she didn't want to admit it. She said, "Oh, listen. Now, listen, first of all, who cares, this girl that you're getting the ticket from? She don't care how old you are." But she said to me, "You buy the tickets." I said, "Marie, buy your own ticket." "Why? I don't want." I said, "Why? Because you're over 55 now? That's so stupid, you know." But they do. They put you in categories. Mm-hmm. I always say about my age, and I don't have a lot of those old people jokes and sayings. I don't think we need to keep telling them how old they are. My reaction is it's other people that make me old, not me. You see, I'm not interested in being old. So therefore, every day, I try to stay as young as I can by doing things. I mean, when we were in New York, he nearly had me crazy. We walked until
we were at Sardi's, we were at Joe Allen's, we did the show, we were up, we were down.
I mean, but we walk a lot, and we dance, as I said. We tap dance 2 and 3 times a week, and we go out a lot. You know, we're not always stuck in the house, and I think that's where older people, unfortunately, they've got to get out. I don't care, and never ask an older person how they are, because they're going to tell you. And
they sure will. Every ailment known to man, they'll tell you.
And I always stop them, and I go, "I don't want to hear about it." Now, listen, I'm not to say that I haven't had a few ups and downs in my life, and I never tell this, but I know you probably have a lot of older people. I'm a survivor of colon cancer, 25 years.
Oh, my gosh.
Let me tell you something. I decided in my mind, with the help of someone upstairs, the doctor was going to tell me, "Oh, you've got that big 5. When he started, I said, "I don't want to hear it. I'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I've got great support." And that was the end of it. I went home and decided I wanted to live, and that's what I did. And here I am 25 years later. So there's never an end until you decide, well, I guess it's over, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what other people's thinking is, but I know what my thinking is. And I've always hoped it rubs off on other older people. And stop talking about your illnesses, because the more you talk about them, the sadder you get and the older you feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You get positive thinking. It really affects everything. I think that subconsciously, if you feel negative all the time, it's going to affect your health, and you don't even realize it.
When I was in the Follies, there was really a cute girl in the Follies. Kit Smite was her name.
Kit, are you listening?
Actually, she was the pilot for...
She was Ginger in the original pilot of Gilligan's Island before they took a little turn and brought in Tina Louise.
Oh, wow.
So anyhow, I kind of helped get her in because she was really cute. And so she was sitting next to me, and she would come in, and she'd go, "Oh," and she'd put her hand up to her head, and then she'd go to her, "Oh," to her back, and I'm like, "Don't start, kid." And so one day she came in and she sat down, and I said to myself, whatever the illness is, I'm going to cure her today. And so she went with her head. She put her hand up to her head and went, Oh, and I said, you're not having a headache today or from now on. It's over, kid. So don't even bring it up. And that's the thing. Every day she was talking herself into it and hoping someone was going to say to her, so, kid, oh, gosh, you've got a headache, darling. Well, isn't that too bad?
And, it's amazing to me. Ray, you probably remember this. I mean, you've heard so many young people. They've got a pain all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I choreographed a lot of shows, and I was choreographing a show, and these kids were like 25 or something, and, oh, Mr. Prescott, I'm sore. I said, I've been sore since 1965. What's your point? They live with
nice.
I mean, what the hell? Get over yourself.
Right.
I couldn't have told them about my bad back.
I know.
No, you guys are great. Hey, listen, I want to play a word association with both of you. I'm going to throw out a few names from the past, and give me a one-word description or answer for each one that I give you. Okay? I'm going to throw out some names. Sophie Tucker.
Oh, wonderful. Great. And I saw her 3 times when I was a kid around 10 or 11.
Robert Mitchum.
Yeah. Not my favorite. Okay.
Okay, I just want to see what you thought. Fred McMurray.
Oh, I loved him. Great guy.
Sal, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Les Brown.
Oh my God, yes, I worked with the band. Yeah,
great band. Great guy.
Nice man to work with.
And one other guy that I was curious. I don't know if you ever worked with him directly. He was a talk show host, Jack Parr.
No, I never worked with Jack.
No, but I hear he was a really kind man.
Yeah,
probably too kind for his own. Some people in this business love what they do, and they wear their heart in their sleeve, and I think he was a little too kind for his own good. You know what I mean?
Right. I think the business kind of ate him up.
Arthur Godfrey.
Well, it can go.
Ed had one more. Arthur Godfrey.
Arthur Godfrey.
Didn't know him, but I did work with Julius LaRosa.
Oh, how about, yes, he just passed away not too long ago.
And Julius was just the nicest, sweetest man I think I have ever known. I mean, he just was adorable. When my brother passed away in Los Angeles, and I went up to the funeral, and I was off for a few days. When I came back to the show, there was this letter for me sitting on my dressing table from Julius. And it was just the nicest, sweetest. I mean, that he took the time of his busy career. That's what I mean about having heart. And I don't know, I know what his problems were with Arthur, but I'm on Julius's side.
No, he sang Agumbati. I mean, that was a big song that he had. Now, did he really... I mean, I know he got thrown off a few shows. Can you tell me some of the stuff that went on with him?
Well, you know what? When Dorothy worked with him, first of all, don't forget, everything changes. When you're young, you're certain, you do hopefully learn a couple of things,
I think the attitude is like, tell him about what Loretta Young's son said.
Ray, I don't know. Do you perform or do you sing or do you do that kind of stuff?
No. I'm just a talk show host, a DJ, and an athlete. That's all I do.
It's okay. But you do perform. You're an athlete. Okay, whatever. Yeah. So the deal is, I put together the entertainment when Loretta Young got her star posthumously in Palm Springs, and her son, was here, and he came, and we talked, and we did it at her house. It was a round house, and all the girls came in gowns, and remember the Loretta Young show? She would come in the door and all that business. Anyway, and her son said, I said, how was your mother? Because I just loved Loretta Young. And he said, well, she said she was a good mother. Good mother. On the set, she wanted her way. I said, well, it was called the Loretta Young Show, wasn't it? I said, sounds like a plan to me. So what happens is, when you're the star or when you're in charge of whatever, and the show, it's incumbent upon you to make the show good. You want the show to be good. So often people around you aren't that interested in doing the best job they can do. So you have to remind them to do the best job they can do. Then you become the bad guy.
He tries that with me all the time. It doesn't work.
No, but Ray, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So oftentimes they get a bad rap because they want the things to be right. I was just telling you the other day, I was doing a show in Atlanta, George M., and the lights were all screwed up. I said, tell the stage manager getting here. So he came in and he said, do you want the lights perfect? I said, do you want your paycheck perfect? I mean, those people out there are paying for the right. I mean, of course, everything's not going to be perfect all the time, but you certainly want to aim for perfection as much as you can, then you're going to kind of hit the mark sometimes.
Right. We had a question off the air. One of our callers called in and wants Dorothy or Ken to elaborate on the fact or the point of burlesque actors morphing into the vaudeville era. Explain how that worked and explain what the burlesque era was like and how it became the vaudeville era and how it became, and how things came after that.
Well, I think burlesque was a little more risque, I should say.
But nothing like today.
Oh, no.
It was...
So burlesque, they had... Gypsy was a good example of that. Mm-hmm. The Broadway show and all the music. They did a pretty good job of that. But the chorus girls were not the greatest dancers in the world. And they did a lot of funny numbers. I tell you, Milton Berle used to do a lot of burlesque in his show, but you didn't realize it was burlesque he was doing.
They did all those comedy sketches came out of burlesque.
Okay.
Like the man in the barber chair and, all that kind of stuff. And the comedians usually, they would MC the show.
Okay.
A lot of times, and then they would come out and introduce everybody, and then the girls came out, and the girls were all, they did all those numbers like, yeah, and
they spoofed sex as much as they went for real sex. Do you know what I mean? So It was a really entertaining show. Not like today where they didn't just take their clothes off and stand there. It was a totally different thing.
There was in Chicago on the South Side, close to the Loop, there was the 606 Club. And we used to go there all the time because, after shows, because I worked the Chez Paris and the Black Hawk and the Sherman Hotel and the Empire Room and the Palmer House, all these shows. But anyhow, so, in those days, everybody used to go out after the show. At the Chez, we did a show at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they didn't care if there were 4 people there. You did the show. That's what's known as really loving show business. And you never said, are we going to do a show? You just did it, and you did it as good for those 4 people as you would for a full crowd. But anyhow, and so we'd all go out, and somebody invariably would say, let's go to 606. And God, how I'd like to go there today. But anyhow, and that was truly burlesque. And that was the place where we had Carrie Fennell, was her name. And
I want you to listen to this very carefully. Carrie Fennell.
And Carrie was the first one that I know of who used to twirl her
tassels on her chest. And one tonsil went one way and one went the other.
Nice.
Hey. Now that's control.
That's control. Hey, Dorothy, we have a call for you guys.
Okay.
Caller, you're on the air.
Hey, good evening. Thank you very much, Dorothy, for being part of our life tonight.
Oh, well, aren't you nice? I love
Really
being
appreciate it. I could hear your stories all night long. I think nowadays, you tell me your opinion, I was going to say, nowadays, people have talent, but they're very one-dimensional talent. And somebody like you, I guess maybe a throwback, you learned so many different things with all the opportunities you had and all the spontaneity that you had to have to learn things quickly. You're very multi-talented, and your stories, people nowadays will never, ever have stories like you have. And my question was, did you ever get a chance to either meet or work with Busby Berkeley?
With who? Busby Berkeley. Oh, no, I tell you what, he was a little bit before my time.
But I worked with him,
I mean, when he did the movies. But Ken did.
and I'll tell you why. My first Broadway show was No No Nanette with Ruby Keeler in 1970 and 71. And Busby Berkeley was in his declining years, but he was a consultant on the show. And it was a pleasure to meet him. He really was not in terribly great health, but he did have some wonderful stories.
And the thing is that the Jackie Gleason show, which was on for so long, they had the Marilyn June Taylor dancers.
Yeah.
All the dancers were just exceptional. They were wonderful dancers, and they did great acrobatics and whatnot in those days. But the Muriel Abbott dancers and June, on television, she did. It was so amazing to me the first time I saw it because she had taken what Busby Berkeley had done in his movies.
Shot overhead with the formations of the girls.
And I'm like, June, you stole that. Oh, I hope she isn't listening, but no, she's gone. But anyway, see, I can tell a lot of things because they're all gone now, all but me. But listen, if the caller is still on, I so appreciate what you just said, and I think the thing is, I love sharing those old stories, and there's 5 million of them I have, But the thing that I'm very proud of is that I can still remember them. And boy, that makes me really happy. Now, sometimes...
Well, listen, thank you very much, Dorothy. You're a beautiful person. Thank you very much for everything you've done.
Well, thank you for calling in.
He's one of our best callers. He's a very educated person on many facets of entertainment, so we're really blessed to have him. I want to talk to you more at a different time because we want to... This conversation could literally go on for hours.
Yes, it could. And if you had a nice vodka and tonic, it could go on for a couple of days.
It could, and believe me, I would love to talk to you guys till 6 in the morning. You guys are the best, and let's plan on doing this again.
Oh, great! We love to,
Yes.
and you guys are so great.
If you let us know how soon we'll get those stories all out.
Okay.
Without,
Fabulous.
doing it ad-libbed.
Yeah, no. I think sometimes doing the ad-lib thing is much better because it's more natural, and I enjoy that format better myself. But yes.
You can send me that address, and I'll send you that book.
Okay.
Yes,
I
will do that.
We'll talk to you off the air about that.
Yes.
But listen, we'll do this very soon, and I wish you both the very, very best, and thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.